Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's garden video. The first day of the week I didn't record anything except what I had picked from the garden, and this time of year it's all about tomatoes are starting to come in, we're still getting some eggs, there's zucchini and cucumber. It's really just kind of the same thing every day, which, changes per the season. I have a shot here of my beans, and the reason I did that is because I'm actually leaving most of my green beans, these are pole beans, on the pole. They're very prolific. I'm picking handfuls of them here and there to eat, but I'm mostly leaving them. I'm going to let them dry on the vine, and I'm going to use them for chili beans later this winter. I also have a hard time picking all the zucchini and holding them all, but I'm typically getting 3 or 4 a day, so very prolific production this year. Here's another shot of them when I brought them in the house. This particular day I also harvested a bunch of lettuce, some kale, some chard, a bunch of greens that I'll make into salad. I also did some time pickling. I'm trying to keep up with my cucumbers by making little chunky pickles that I actually throw in salads. And last week I had shown that a stalk of my corn had fallen down, which I thought was kind of weird. I wasn't sure why. So I thought I wanted to just check on the ears of corn, see what they were doing. And they were very small, but I peeled them back anyway, and they look like they formed really nicely. They're really well-formed ears of corn. They just need more time to develop to get nice and big. And so it was nice to know that the corn has developed nicely, and I'm excited for it to finally ripen on the vine, and then I'll have some corn a little bit later this fall. Every day I'm out in the garden checking things and see how they're doing, and in this particular day I walked over to the tomatillos, something I've never really grown before, and kind of felt around them, and they create this like green berry kind of thing in the middle with this nice flaky edge, and there was some stuff forming up, so I'm excited to see, how those do. What you see me doing here is, remember that giant beet seed thing that went to seed, and there was this crazy overwhelming thing? Well, I had harvested it last week, and then I put all the seeds, or a lot of the seeds, in the greenhouse to sort of dry up so that I could shake them off and harvest them, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to collect all the seeds, but here you see me outside just basically shaking those stems and getting a bunch of seeds and a bunch of other detritus that fell off. And here at the end you see these 2 huge bins. These are actually humidity covers for seedling trays that are just full of seeds. So I'll let those dry out for a couple weeks in the greenhouse. And also what I decided to do was I have a couple of the onion stalks that were really getting to the point where they looked like they could be cut off and maybe brought to the greenhouse. And the reason I did that is because once seed heads form, they then start to dry out, usually on the plant, and then they start to lose their seeds. Poppies are a perfect example of this. They start off, the color of the plant, and then they turn, brown, and they start splitting off. And you can see here a little zoomed in where they were starting to split and lose their seeds, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't losing any seeds, so I wanted them in that bin in the greenhouse next to my drying out beet seeds. I didn't show myself harvesting this, but this is just a typical day of cucumber, zucchini, and tomatoes. It's just kind of crazy how prolific they're being this year. I said earlier that I'm leaving most of my beans on the vine, and that is true, but this is just kind of a shot of me going around. This is where my zucchini, my cucumber, and my beans are, and just harvesting a little bit for the day. I also checked on my plums. We do have a plum tree in the yard, and they had not very many plums this year. In general, this plum tree hasn't been super prolific, but I went around and felt them and saw how they were doing, and they felt very nice and ripe, so I picked them all off the tree. And I have enjoyed them, and this week has been also about enjoying other plums. Some neighbors down the road have some plums, so I've picked them. I just love plums, such a good fruit. I also have talked about this whole year. Funny if you've been following these videos. I have wanted to cut down and remove this broccoli forever because, once it produces, it kind of just spits out little bits here and there, and it was looking really ragged in the midsummer, but I just kind of left it in the ground. I just got lazy and never took it out. Well, it does still produce little tiny heads of cauliflower, and I use them in cooking, and so I cleaned it up a bit and fed some to the animals. Clearly, they get to enjoy the stuff that's not really good to eat for humans, but I just still have kept it in the ground, and I still continue to pluck off little handfuls like this, which are perfect for a little meal, and I will leave them in the ground probably until they die in the winter. Here's a shot of me picking some tomatoes. I go out, like I said, everything in the garden is kind of a daily routine. You go out, you pick, you kind of see what's getting ripe, and things ripen day after day. So spend some time harvesting some tomatoes. Most of my tomatoes that are coming in at this point in time are very small. I also continue to harvest potatoes out of the ground. I have a whole row of potatoes that are just sitting in the ground, just waiting to be harvested. And sooner than later, I'll pull them out and just kind of store them in the storeroom. But for now, I'm just picking them as needed, and there was a little, basket for the day. They have some dirt on them, so I just let them dry off in the sun, and then I rub off the dirt and then just bring them into the garage for use. I also decided to stop leaving my onions in the ground and actually harvest them. I've been sort of just letting them do their thing. Onions are ready to harvest when the top of the stalk flops over. So they have been flopped for a very long time, and I've just left them in the ground, just kind of ignoring them because I can. But I thought I need to start clearing out the garden. I need to start making space for next year and what's going in the ground and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to pull out all the leftover onions. And instead of actually letting them sort of harden off for a week or two where these green stalks kind of dry up, I decided just to remove them right away. I don't know what impact that'll have, hopefully not a big impact. But the reason I did that is because I wanted to take these green stalks like I did earlier in the year, and I actually am putting them in the dehydrator, and I'm going to make sort of a green onion powder out of it. That was the load of onions I got that are going to dry out for a little bit before they go into the store. And this is the tops of the onions that I'm putting in a dehydrator, and I'll grind up and make sort of an onion powder out of. Another look at kind of what came off the plants on that day. There was my tomato load, and there was my zucchinis that I picked. And we're to today. So, that was the week. It was a lot of zucchinis and cucumbers and stuff, but here's a look at my zucchinis, my cucumber in the background, and my beans kind of off to the right. For those of you following the plight of the beets, these little things have protected a lot of the beets big enough where they're starting to grow. I'll remove those sleeves this week. This is a look at my corn. Some of the stalks are falling over. I'm not sure why, but the corn is developing nicely. Here's a look at my tomatoes, which look very green, but there are little tomatoes growing in there. And here's a look at some of the cauliflower, and this is kind of funny. This is how good the cauliflower did. I just, it's great. I'll eat it and I will enjoy it. There's a look at some cabbage and some chard, which the chard is really ornamental, but I do feed it to the animals. Here's a look at the lettuce. I'm going to start some new lettuce for the fall, I think this week. There's my strawberries, and I noticed this. This is funny. I thought I was planting 4 kales, and 2 of those plants are not kale. They are either broccoli or cauliflower. I'm not sure which, so we will find out as they grow. Here's a look at that janky old broccoli, which is still, being a workhorse and producing some, enough broccoli for me to eat, which is nice. Here's a look at it's my asparagus bed on the left that I put some sunflowers in and then some butternut squash in, and then I've got my berries and my grapes in the back. And then here's a look at my raspberries. They are forming up new flowers, which means they're going to produce a lot of berries, and I get both a fall harvest and a midsummer harvest. That was my basil in the front, and there's my tomatillos in the back that I showed a little bit earlier in the video. I haven't really zoomed in until now, but there's what you can see the tomatillos look like as they're developing up on the plant. Here's a look at my beans again. I showed it earlier in the video, but showing it again, I've got a lot of beans on my pole beans, but again, most of them I'm just letting dry out. Here's a look at my carrots that I've started harvesting, but I'm mostly just, again, leaving in the ground until I need them. My onion bed is pretty much empty, so here's just the seed heads that I'm still letting develop that I haven't put into the greenhouse yet. And looking at other parts of the yard, this is a look at our walnut tree. It is producing lots of walnuts this year, so I'll be harvesting those soon. The apples are ripening up really nicely in the apple trees, so I'll be harvesting them really soon. And we have a large mature grape, 100-year-old plus grape in the yard, which is where I've gotten my grapes up until now, and this is a look at them, and they're developing nicely as well. So I had the brand new grapes in the garden that you've seen quite a bit of. Here's a look at the beet seeds, which continue to dry out. I'm just kind of in there moving them around a little bit. I'll pull a bunch of little twigs and stuff out before I store them, but they're getting closer to storage. And looking at those onion heads, more of the onions have started opening up, which is great that they're in that bin, which means I will collect all the seeds as they start to fall out, which I'll have a great harvest for that. And that's where we are for this week, and I thought I'd just leave you with a little shot of the animals in the field.